And that's fine. Okay. I mean, Dark Age of Man moves, and because everything is because we have motivation of what we're trying to achieve, that is going to be interrupted with random variables that, right? That random variables. It was. What was interesting about that particular event is it kept coming back up. The random seed kept coming back up. So as David dealt with it, I would roll it again, and it would. Right. I would have to reintroduce the witch, back into the scene, So that was what's so cool about it. It's like every time David was kind of separating himself from that scene, I would roll it again, and it would, So I think I had rolled it 3 times where they put her in the stockade. I rolled it the third time. I thought, holy shit, this witch, we're not done with this witch yet. But session ended, so.
Right. And I brought it up
now,
because...
if we were playing where I was the continuous presenter, the witch might still be a factor in the next session, but it doesn't have to be, because it's again, we're supposed to be naive. We all know the witch is there, but if this is 3 weeks later, it's a whole different... The witch is assumed a loose end that might not matter at that point. Or I put her back on the RSC, and 2 weeks later, the witch comes up again, and all I have to do is present, that witch that you were dealing with had escaped at some point. That might be the RSC. The witch had escaped, right? That would have been just the introduction of the RSC. Hey, that witch that was in the stocks, she's escaped now because I rolled her again. So, because I don't know what is.
Bed of Father Falcone.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So, yes, something. Right. Yeah. So.
Well, tell you what, I didn't use dilemmas on this, and this is what was interesting. Like you said, Jason, we never used that before, so I thought, well, I'll make 2 dilemmas, and then it occurred to me, well, I'll give Sam's character, he can roll up the numbers, and that's what is going to be his scrying, whether he dreams it or rolls the ball or what have you.
A vision, right? Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now this is how weird this was. Okay. The 2 dilemmas that I didn't really say, I introduced them to you in one respect, because one of them, and it was so weird, because the main one is the monastery, priests, monks on a pilgrimage on a feast day. Okay, there's a couple of other things that I don't want to mention here. All right, yet to be discovered. So I'll leave it right there. So that was there. That's why I said the feast of St. At the Wall, etc. Was what I was given to Jason at the thing and what it was prepping for. So that was part of the dilemma. What was situationally going on there, right? Okay. 2 other things that I can bring in later, like we're talking about the witch or whatever. Okay. Now what Sam rolled up, and I don't want to go into deep, but it was along the ancient way. Farmers, village, folk, commoners, exiles from another kingdom.
Yeah.
All to a saint. Yeah. Okay. So what they're doing is it correlated with like mine of priests and monks on a pilgrimage. They're pilgrims coming down of St. Ethelwald, and correlated with his vision. I didn't pre-plan that. He just rolled that. And I was like, that falls in line with like him wanting to intercept or whatever he could do with it.
It's eerie how...
So here's the thing about role-playing. If you adhere to genre... if everybody's adhering to genre and you adhere to genre, these variables, these ideas, this is any game. I mean, D&D, I don't care what it is. If everybody adheres to genre, as things are introduced, they should mesh because we're in a genre, right? Now, those kind of details really...
This is wild because...
Those kind of details really tie things together completely randomly, right? Yeah.
That was a total random... That's amazing.
I rolled bones twice, but my other dilemma, which was a little bit secret, is the king's wooden palace, a witch or cunning man, lost in the mud, gift of a ghost. You see what I'm saying? So there was that. That brought that witch in that situation back. I don't fully realize what's going on there.
Yeah.
But I rolled bones, so that indicated to me, okay, well, I guess David's character just saw this bone, and then what's going to happen. So, but it ties in with some other stuff I rolled, to what was happening, even to you, because your blood. Anyway, I don't want to go there because y'all can take it and go
I got you.
You want to, what I mean? As we switch.
Yeah.
But that is crazy. When I was rolling, even the prompts were feeding into it.
Every
time I'd roll it, and it, not to mention that it didn't even occur to me until I look up. I was like, okay, I roll bones again, and we're back there, and it says skeleton. And just you put the creatures are animated bones of these long dead, cursed by witches to guard locations. Whether it's the witch or not, or some other. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, bones, bingo. That's when the skeleton was crawling up out of the mud. Anyway, so
all of it falls into place.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make contextual, logical sense. Just as it plays on, right?
But none of that was replaying. The Abbey, and
what's amazing,
it has some tie-ins that they could be, to me, I was like, oh crap.
Yeah, I expected you to call on a luck check when I said when I brought up the rumors of a witch. I mean, of a witch leading an army in the north. I'd expected you to call a luck check up on that to confirm whether I actually had legitimate information.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right? Yeah, so if I'm inventing, if I'm creating or inventing something, I always expect a roll against the DB, right? You don't have to.
Well, I mean, if you made,
I was inventing it solely based on what Sam has told us. So I knew that was real. So would I conceivably have had spies that were informing me on this? Makes total sense. It can be accepted completely because I didn't make it up. Sam is doing it. So I'm not actually creating it. I'm alluding to what Sam's characters. What I'm doing is reinforcing what Sam said he's doing.
But
I'm making it relevant to our situation. Right. So Sam is tied to our situation, and I'm confirming what he's already said he's doing. So I've confirmed Sam's narrative, Sam's fiction, and I've also made it relevant to us. But I kind of thought there would be I thought you might ask for a luck check to see if I actually knew about Sam's character, right? I'm happy you didn't, because Sam already said he's doing it, right?
Yeah, but when you declared that you did, I thought it was an action of agency because you said, and you tied it with you had spies in the area that would know this. So I couldn't contest it.
Yeah.
Well, you're lying about this. Or
I expected. And which is why when Faustus questioned me and Daedrin questioned me, I was like, I'm not going to relinquish their names because no one demanded I make a roll to prove it was true, right?
So and I don't think I would have asked for a roll either.
Because the player already
established that Otto. But also because I think previous fiction established that Otto was probably the most prominent and powerful alderman. Right. So it would stand to reason that he would have spies and scouts and whatever.
And all I did was like, how do you do this?
And I'm not inventing something. Yeah. I'm actually alluding to what Sam has already said he's done. So I'm saying there's got to be a chance we would have heard about this. Yeah.
Well, and now we know that the alderman has ears and eyes sprinkled throughout.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
So and what I'm referring to is I would have thought when I said to Wesweld, what are you doing about it? Have you heard these rumors? What are you doing about it? I expected a luck check to see if Wesweld knew about it.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Because if not, I'm actually the guy I'm the messenger telling Wesweld about it, which is what it turned into. It turns out I'm the guy informing young Wesweld, right?
I kind of think that was inferred anyway, because, I just got that. Yeah. That was the vibe I was getting.
And it works perfectly, right?
Yeah.
Well, but what's really funny is, as far as you guys know, we still don't know if Alderman Utta's utterances here were true or not. I mean, I know, obviously, but
which is why I refer to them as rumor, right? Because they're just rumors. Are these rumors true? Exactly. What is this? What is? And my goal was to send an entourage to investigate.
Right.
But I don't want to order that. Now, I would order that behind Lord's. So if Wesweld had said no, I would have used my prestige to order men to do it.
That's why I asked for a prestige roll to see how much he would entrust you with that information. It wasn't necessarily a luck if he determined it. Yeah. But because I was playing him as a very new
naive, young kid.
There was an ambassador. standing in instead for his father who was down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why you went into the coaxing mood, like step up, you got to do this. You became. I was like, roll your prestige and see how much he entrusts himself with you, and then he used that.
So we still play to find out.
Who's on my side?
Even though we take agency, we have motivation. We have a little more idea of what we want to achieve, but it's still play to find out because the dice.
Yeah.
Either logically, we don't make a check because it just makes sense. We're just confirming what we already know about what Sam said, or we make that roll, which is going to dictate. It's almost backwards from say D&D, right?
Right.
Which is difficult. I mean, players want to be told, and they want to ask questions, and they want to make decisions.
Right.
It's a completely different role, really, for both the GM and the not completely different, but. I mean, it can be awkward.
Well, and that's why I asked with hesitation, like, may I jump in here as the alderman, or I didn't want to take too much, like I didn't want to presume too much agency on my, because I'm still like, if I'm not the presenter, I still feel like, okay, how much am I allowed to add to the fiction, right? But I think what I'm coming to know, go ahead.
You guys are actually, if I'm presenting, you guys are actually, in a sense, so don't take this the wrong way, but you guys are actually randomizers. You guys are like living, breathing dice.
Yeah,
right.
To the game.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely a handshake. I don't want to assume anything.
Yeah,
because you each are going to add what's going on. It's just all to the stew, to the pot.
I don't know that thing had any kind of connection with that previous witch.
Nope.
But through Faustus's eyes, it made sense.
And
she was there. She potentially
that witch was so big in the last session. She was so influential on Faustus that like it would almost be weird if he didn't see a connection,
exactly.
Especially if we haven't heard of her.
Faustus's truth. It's okay if that is Faustus's truth.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, right. I mean, how much of the stories do we never know in just a traditional D&D? When you come into a tomb and there's skeletons. Well, we just battle the skeletons. We just roll initiative and fight the skeletons. But who are these skeletons? Where the fuck did they come from? Our narrative, our ideas of that, we may learn later if there's something tied. But usually in like a module, the skeletons are just skeletons, right? But
they're there, They're there.
But we make sense of these skeletons must be a. Something, whatever. So we're going to make sense of that same thing. I mean, Faustus's truth, and I can imagine this literally is going through Faustus's head. This damn witch. I can just see him blame anything that goes bad. I can see Faustus blaming that damn witch, right? I can just see it. Everything that goes bad in his life, right? That damn witch. I'm cursed.
Any of that. It was a random roll. So, I mean, I'm like, it probably is.
Yeah.
As far as I know, it makes perfect sense that it would be. You know what I mean?
And why
wouldn't it be? So it's just everybody adds to it.
That is the primary difference between being a player in this type of role playing game. We're not agreeing to tell a story, and then we are playing characters, but applying the general truth to it. Instead of asking the GM if this is okay or waiting for the GM to tell us the truth and we just ask questions about the thing until we get the truth, we're actually we're allowed to play from our perspective of our character.
The closest thing is that luck die.
Yeah.
That is the closest thing to someone saying, maybe, or yes or no.
Yeah, that's right. That's it. Yeah. Like when the horse fell in the trap. If Sam visualizes the horse is calmed and in the hole, we don't have to relocate the horse. If Sam visualizes the horse in the hole,
I'm responsible for everybody at the table, not just Sam.
Yeah.
So if I declare that the horse is there and you get the picture and they get the picture, so I've got to be responsible for being more clear, concise in my description.
Yeah, if it matters. So my point is this: did it matter whether the horse was in the hole or not in the hole? Did it matter, Del? I mean, did it matter where the horse was at?
No. I mean, ultimately.
So if Sam,
I'm not going to nitpick my.
If Sam visualizes the horse is calmed in the hole, as he describes sliding down to go to the horse in the hole, I wouldn't have corrected him. That's what he's seeing. I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying
No, yeah.
The only thing you want to correct is tactical stuff that matters. I'm not going to correct where the horse is at if that's what he sees, because it tactically doesn't make any difference.
Oh no, right? You're right on that. You're right on that. But,
but that's just communication. I'm not being critical. I'm just saying it's for the sake of Sam's continuity for what he was thinking. I would have just let him say it, right?
And those perspectives can push the narrative.
Bingo.
They can,
Bingo.
Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, because if I was in that hole and I failed that roll and the horse kicked me,
you make a critical fail roll, and I'm the GM, and so now that you've told me you're in this pit with this horse, and you've made a critical fail, I'm gonna play with that a little bit as a GM, right? You're the one that puts yourself in the hole with a horse, right? Like Faustus. My goal was not to kill Faustus; it was to separate him from this creature that was killing him.
Right.
Unfortunately, he then rolled a critical fail on the on the luck check and got himself on fire. And
that was kind of
Udda will sleep well tonight. He's not responsible for Faustus's death.
No, but what's so crazy to me is like it's so bizarre because here Faustus is this like scholar, and old, a little bit, not feeble, but older.
Yeah, he's probably 28,
not a
30.
warrior. No,
I'm kidding. Back then,
41. But but there were a few times. I remember when I was running it, right, and we were in the battle, and he actually went in to the battle, right, and then this time too, I'm like, holy shit, this dude is like a straight up hero, like when it matters, he's like he'll go in, and so it was funny because to me,
book smart but not.
Well, but it doesn't matter.
But again, we play to find out. You ordered them to bring a torch to this thing, but you felt you did not make the roll. Therefore, they didn't do anything for you. So that's the thing I love about it. If Faustus, if we confirmed that call with the right roll, then they would have come with torches and separated you from this creature. Hopefully, right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what this game is interpretive. Like when he fell in there, he fell the roll to get him to move, and it said, "This means that they're in a stupor." Then he 100%. Then he tries. Then he falls in, but I had him roll up to see if once you broke their stupor, if they got back in time to be much of a difference.
Perfect.
In hauling him out, and then he double that.
And narratively, that makes total sense. The first thing I thought, you didn't fail that roll because they don't listen to you. It's because they're terrified. They don't know what they're seeing. So I immediately knew when Dell said they're in a stupor, I said, damn straight they are. It's not that they're ignoring Faustus, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. So we can use the failed dice roll to confirm narratively what makes sense without blaming Faustus or embarrassing Faustus or that it makes depending on the situation.
This was a super cool session because I really to me it's so wild when I get to see literally two games happening at the same time, right? Because my thing had nothing to do with you guys, but at the same time it's so cool because this could potentially weaken Dredgetown in some way, shape, or form, whether it's physically, whether it's soldiers, right? My war band, Dell had mentioned, they were getting thrashed, right? And at first, I was like, shit, we got to get out of here. But when we couldn't, right, then I was like, I was so scared because I was already on 3 wounds, and I was like, this girl is not a fighter, but, that blade, I'm like, damn. And so she
fight or die, right? Baby. I don't care if you are not.
At the end of the day, she's a Viking, and so she's like, But the other thing that I loved was that the time that I called on Hela, the goddess of the underworld or whatever, I failed. But when I beseeched the gods in Asgard or whatever, then I was like, oh. Cool. So that was weird, but I like that. But I just the one thing I was surprised about was that we heard no mention of Father Falcone at either the sort of impromptu war council or the commotion in the street.
Yeah. See, and so if I don't bring that up, or David does, for some reason introduce this character. We're creating the scene. by what I bring up. What I say is true.
Yeah.
I already knew Faustus wasn't there, so I confirmed that by saying, "And where is Faustus?" That was a confirmation of what had already played out. When I referred to you, the rumors of the witch in the north, I didn't refer to the pilgrims, right? But what I loved is when Dell, as Wesweld, says, well, we have the pilgrims coming with the bones. This is the bones of. Then I was able to draw on that and say that's a motivation to investigate. We don't want these pilgrims waylaid by Danes on our watch, right?
Right.
So that played. It gave me more motivation toward getting this scout party on horses and out there to see what the hell's going on, right? Although I didn't say that's what I want. I mean, it was a conversation, but it fuels everything. Fuels in a way just that offhanded remark by Weswell that these pilgrims are bringing the bones of Saint Ethelwald, so to speak, and then when he denies it, basically, well, they're trusting God. Well, I'm thinking literally, Mike, as Uda, I'm thinking, well, God. We're the ones that are going to be blamed if they get waylaid by bandits, right? People aren't going to blame God for that. They're going to blame They're going to blame the Washburns, right? So it's like it's perfect. It's just it's giving me motivation to make sure this doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
But Dell, on the other hand, doesn't have to be planning that. So like in a game like D&D, what would we all be doing? We'd all be saying, the DM's up to something. He's out to do that. So you're constantly feeling adversarial in a way toward the DM because the DM's doing something. There's some pieces the DM is moving behind the screen. It's just that's the way D&D is. It's a game that doesn't allow us to know everything. So if we play
Dale was moving tonight already.
Oh yeah.
One thing I wanted to do, because last time I think if we load down these random seed charts, I always try to use one word things. Like I'll use the word draft, and to me that could be a draft a beard, a draft horse, a draft through you, a conscription. However it applies to. In this case, it was
context.
The draft that felt through Sam's character. That led back to what was happening there in the direction you went to, because you had a success about when you calmed the horse and you slit the horse's throat in thinking, and I was like, this is going to give him more information about the course that he's on, and then the raven flight in that direction, and it was reinforced by that draft, which correlated with what was going on with Faustus. So
that was awesome.
If you just tie things together, but I think I have. It's a balance, because we're all essentially for this game. We're all presenters. We're just
in a way. We're all players.
Our players are this, and this is where sometimes. I mean, you're right about that. Like a normal thing, like if Sam says the horse is in the pit, it wouldn't have been. I feel like articulate. To be honest with you guys.
And again, I wasn't being critical. I was just.
No, you're 100% right, and it doesn't need to be
right.
But if I can get myself sidetracked in thinking, was I not that? I can undermine the game itself. You see what I'm saying? But a lot of it's just depending on who you're playing with, because I know y'all are adding pieces to that puzzle, which feeds me and gives me information.
Sure.
Well, you nailed it.
Is this that witch?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Well, you nailed it. We're all presenters.
That's part of the give and take. This is just part of the tennis game of the game, Hitting the ball back and forth.
Exactly. And in the second edition of this game, what Dell just said is 100%. We're all presenters. I present Uda. Sam presents Ursa. David presents Faustus, and Dale presents the world. And we all have a job to do. I've got to work. I'm presenting Uda, and I'm trying to do what I want to do.
That's
we're all DMs in a way, right?
Right.
That is one of my pet peeves with other games, is that players just show up with ready to roll dice. And they don't. They don't do that, and I don't think that's really right. I don't know. It's probably, like I said, it's a pet peeve of mine. But I think that other
But I think that's kind of learned behavior from how D&D works. D&D is a reactionary game. As players, we are only allowed to react, and we're only allowed to ask questions. That's D&D.
And that's why,
that's the way it is.
Exactly why I was doing what I was asking with the horse.
Yeah.
Because what I probably should have done was just establish it. Just say,
well,
this is what it is.
And that's our goal, if there's a doubt, the GM calls for a roll. Well, let's make a luck check to see if the horse is wounded here.
But it was funny
because the horse may be wounded no matter what you've done, right? Or whatever the case.
Well, and I still have that foundational, like, institutional way of...
Can we...
I asked the GM,
right,
can I do this? Can I do this?
Yeah.
Right? And so, as much as... I've played this game a bunch, obviously, now, but, like, it's weird because I still... it's like, it's that fallback, right?
Well, we haven't mastered how far we can go with our agency as players. Right. But, as I've said before, as I told Del when we were writing it and playtesting it, our system is built to protect the integrity of the fiction from a player who goes too far, because all I have to do is raise the DV, lower the DV, or demand for a roll. So if you go too far, Ursa, with some remark that I have established some control of the airlands on this side of the channel, I can say, oh, have you? Let's make a luck check and find out if that's true. What's fun about that is if it's proved true, it's actually going to have major meaning on your character. But if it proves, you got a little... Okay, you've established a camp on the outside of Ireland, but you haven't really established any... But in her fevered imagination, she thinks she's established it, right? Or I just let it go. Right? If you're trying to seize some kind of real power, I'm going to probably ask for a check. If you're just giving us a little narrative description of where you've been and what you're doing, not a problem, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's why I always want to. That's why I don't know like how I should do this, but I will say my intention is this, right? Because I do want to let Del and obviously everybody else know what the intention is, but I don't necessarily, especially in a game like this where it has to switch back and forth because of the two different camps. I don't necessarily want to only let that out through conversation or whatever. Like but it was because I wanted to be like, I don't want to overstep too much, but the intent here is, she's ambitious and she's. At this point, she's all hopped up on the idea that
and I wouldn't say that's
shit, and so she's gonna,
I wouldn't say that's bad form for a game like this. For somebody to actually say, my intent here is to put together a group of soldiers to go investigate the north and see if this witch is there. And Del would say, "Oh, let's make a prestige check to see if Wesweld accepts this." Or I can just say, as my character, I want you to give me some soldiers. I want to send them with my son as the lead out to investigate this. And then Weswell would say, not a problem, or let's make a check on that, or no, we need all them in here. If you fail the roll, it's a no, we need everybody here, or whatever. So my intent comes from me delivering lines. Well, when you're playing alone in the north by yourself, because you don't have anybody to role play with, you're kind of screwed, because for you to communicate, you have to you have to do that, right?
Yeah, so
I actually have Weswell to demand to make a demand upon, right? Yeah. So you didn't. You're just out there in the wilderness with your band of people. So you have to kind of make it clear, kind of what your intent is in a way.
Well, what was interesting though was at the same time, like, I did that, but it was cool, and I think this is what's fun being in the presenter seat is that when I was establishing early on, sort of I was not the military leader. I mean, I was the leader of this warband, but really it was Halfdan that was the there were his men, right. So he chose to follow me, but so when I was thinking about like, oh crap, what do we do? Point that I was like, I can't retreat, because if I do, I lose these men. They'll go with Halfdan, they'll be his people. I want them to be my people, and so. But what's cool is Del could have, like, it, depending on how it went, like, he could have been like, Halfdan's like, see ya, or he's like, this bitch is crazy, and turned on me, or whatever.
Fall into a role. I don't like to make too much deceptions. One thing I did want to say about like with David's character, if he's playing more of, you can be playing a merchant, you can be playing like a scholar, and if we populate these random seed charts, that's why I like using one words that kind of can be folded into different. Like I use giant, then I flipped through the Dark Age Man book and found giant, serpent, and I was like, okay,
I noticed that.
It correlated with burrow, the barrow, right? Okay, but like David's character, giant could mean something totally different if he's dealing with somebody else. You know what I'm saying? So I could apply that word and for his situation to illuminate something. Yeah. So that's what I was trying to be more versatile.
That's a good tip.
I like that too. I was looking through the book and I was like, wait a minute. Did he really put in a dragon? And so I was like looking to find dragon. Then I saw giant.
Every one of my RSCs have a dragon on them, but they're at number 3 or number 18.
No, I didn't. Yeah, and it wasn't 17. It wasn't 17.
Yeah. Was the first thing I saw was DB12, and I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, you're one of those players.
Not the dragon, because I think that guy's DB14.
Yeah.
But a lot of bad habits we have and insecurities as either players or GMs, because we all got our different styles. That's what I was, to go back. And I know that the point is valid. Like, that's what I'm trying to say when we're shared presenters. Like when you go over and you said the horse is in the thing, I could have let it ride, but my natural proclivity to look at myself is not very articulate. And I've always had that something in me.
Yeah, I mean, because you naturally... Well, naturally, you feel you have to.
Wait a minute, I didn't explain it good enough.
Correct. Right.
That's my hang up that I have to work on to get past to get to where I need to be.
Right. You know. Well, this is the thing about role playing, and I always harken back to this. For me, role playing is always about communication. Every game creates a dynamism. How the game is written and designed to be played and executed and shared with other people at the table. That has an effect on how we do communicate, but. Really, communication is if you were to break D&D, if we were to say, forget system, let's just look at what is D&D for 50 years. It is DM explains the situation, players react, they ask questions, they take an action. That is the form of communication. I don't care what you say, that is what it is. Can't be any other way, because Eloy has all the secrets. Eloy knows all the truths. So we can't make assumptions, or we can make assumptions, but then that ends really badly, right? When you make assumptions, so you have to investigate, and that's part of the point of role playing. Well, what's on the wall? Is it carved in stone? Is it painted? We have to do that. That's how we're involved. That's how the world is presented to us.
Taking in sensory data.
We're taking information.
But the GM is the ultimate arbiter of the truth.
Right, but the GM may or may not over describe that and tell us everything, and we don't have any questions. Or the GM may leave it vague. I tend to be vague to inspire players to investigate. Some guys will give you all that information, and you won't have a whole lot of questions to ask. Then it's a matter of, I'm taking action. So Runeslinger is a great example. He's going to describe it in such a way that I'm never going to have to ask a question. I'm going to take an action. Right? I leave things vague to inspire people to... going to have to get involved, but that's going to require more questions and answers, Q&A. I think that's just how we communicate. But it always ends in the player taking in data, and if it's not sufficient enough, you're going to have to ask more questions. If it is sufficient enough, I can go ahead and take an action, right? Well, this is completely different, because I get to present where UD is at, what UD is doing, and why I'm here. I'm waiting to be led into the chamber to talk to... Dell doesn't know where I'm going with this. He doesn't know that he's going to be playing Lord Washburn today or Wesley Washburn. So I'm now, in a way, presenting the information he may have to ask questions about. Why are you here? What if Dell had said, well, why are you here? I'm here to get information about this witch I'm hearing about in the north. Then Dell would say, oh, okay. Then Dell would go into that conversation expecting that. So he could have reversed the roles and asked me questions. Right? Yeah. So Sam doesn't have to ask, and he doesn't have to express his intent. If Dell, as presenter, asks you some questions, you have a chance to give your intent, right? However,
so
that is a hard headspace to change. That's a huge headspace to change for the GM to become the question asker. I mean, it would be totally flipping the roles on their head, right?
Yeah, it's hard to get out. But and obviously, like with this group, what's so cool is that you can trust that we're not going to go beyond to speak, or that we're going to go beyond what the fiction demands, because at least I know, with us, like, we understand the parameters of Dark Ages England with a little bit of fantasy mixed in, and
genre,
so,
and that's why I call it genre. So if we're all in adherence to the genre and what we're doing, if you do overstep, he's got the ability to say, let's make a luck check on that. Really? Let's make a spirit check to see if the gods do part the clouds. Right.
Yeah. And that's what's awesome. And what's so cool is, like, I can say I'm bringing a Danish warband south. And I can even establish that Northwich has been weakened. I didn't want to establish that they had been taken over because, again, I didn't feel like that was my place. But it also fits entirely within the genre that you had incursions into the South. And so, it's like you can do something in this game.
You could warrant making claims on a larger level.
Correct.
Exactly. And that's what I figured with the sword and with the actions from the previous things. And with the I think my repute was 5, but my prestige was 3 or whatever. So, like...
Well, and you're carrying... you've got the sword. You've clearly got the Dane Slayers. The only thing you didn't describe is Savric's head hanging from your waist, right? But here's the thing. Here's the thing.
It's several months later, so it's
as a GM, as a presenter in Dark Age of Man, that's what I want. I want you to establish ground agency details. Why? Because I have them. So now I make a seed roll, and it says usurper, and I go, and he's got a warband. Now I know where I'm going to put my usurper, right smack in the middle of your warband. Right? So I want you to create a warband. That doesn't give you OP. You're not OP. You're not super powerful.
No, not even
you establish the truth. But now I could put a witch in that warband if I happen to roll that or I could put bandits. Okay, somehow in your warband you collected some bandits along the way, and they're real dickheads, and they're undermining the camp and the morale of the camp. And I'm on the fly going, thank you for the warband, because now I have a place to present.
Are bandits, really?
Yeah, you could. But that was in the moment,
right?
And when David was playing Faustus, and he made that declaration that he's walking around nervous because everything's going down the shitter, and I'm like, let's see how far down it's gone the shitter.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing too. It's like, when I say, I'm here with a warband, it's like, okay, but like you said, that doesn't make me OP at all, because I'm literally surrounded by enemies. So it would be not a problem
precarious
at all
leadership.
Say,
precarious leadership at best.
Sure. Right. Yeah, but if the troops from London decide, we already marched to Dredgetown once to defeat the Danes, we'll do it again.
Yes.
Right. And then,
when you create Halfdan, if I'm presenting and you create Halfdan, the man who comes up and speaks to you, I'm like, okay, now I have Halfdan to I have him to work with. So do you.
Yep.
You can use Halfdan. So can I.
And I mean, just to be fair, I don't sit down virtually to play this game. I don't expect roses and butterflies.
No.
So I would think less of you guys if if things didn't go. If things didn't go, because that's that's the fun of figuring out, overcoming challenges, running away from challenges if need be, whatever.
We will screw ourselves so much harder than a GM ever could. It's like, yikes.
I was going to ask David, though, how you in that moment, like, because it was a pretty tense situation when you...
Faustus knew as soon as that thigh bone permafrost started bleeding off of it, that his days were numbered.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I loved it.
I knew.
Did you feel like you made any impact when you were staring at, you said, Daedrin?
Well, I think it didn't turn out as rousing as I wanted it to, but his final speech there, and then his plea, because that's what it was. It was a desperate plea when he was yelling to everyone that, hey, the witches is coming, and this is just a precursor to what's going to happen.
Yeah,
like your harbinger of doom. Yeah,
but what that scene does is again it confirms Daedrin now as a particular NPC. So David's view of Daedrin and narrating, inviting him descriptively into this narrative scene, actually defines Daedrin more for all of us. We all know now who Daedrin is. He is a fucking waste.
Yeah, he's a
and David just he just stood and watched, right? And
exactly.
This matters
it
because
also helps you.
Yeah. So this is why I don't like exposition in movies. Don't tell me about the evil villain.
Yeah.
Show me the evil villain, and you can show me the evil villain by how my hero responds to the evil villain. Not you don't have to have the evil villain actually do anything evil in my presence. How my hero responds to him tells me he's an evil villain. So Faustus responding to him a particular way defines Daedrin as an evil bastard, which matters to our chronicles as we play.
Yeah,
because with Daedrin's reaction during the meeting, Faustus actually was suspicious that he may know this already.
Right.
And for some unknown reason, maybe playing ignorant. You know?
Yeah.
So,
well, and to be fair, I have my own biases already around Daedrin, so that's why I picked him. But I also felt like it would make sense that
totally.
Based on the description that we have in the source material, right, in Dark Age of Man about Dredgewater and its nobles, or its aldermen, it's not all peaches and roses, right?
It never was.
I mean, you got Mort, who's literally like a traitor, and then and so it made sense that somebody would try to kind of rival Uda, at least a little bit, right? To try to see, because that's what aldermen often would do, right? They would jockey for power.
And we would have to call on a vote. At some point, I was going to call for a vote. And then I would expect Dell to say, okay, let's make a luck check to see if they go your way, Uda.
Yeah.
Right? And he could lower that DV based on my argument, right? If he thought my argument was good and Faustus has confirmed my argument with his speech, and I say, let's call on you can have Uda's dissenting voice, and then I can call for a vote. And Dell just makes a roll and modifies the DV based on what's transpired and says, Weswell looks up and says, take a small band and go north. Your son can leave, whatever. Or no, we've got a festival here. I can't let anybody go, right? So it can happen so many ways. And there's no right or wrong. That's the amazing thing. And
what we're all witnessing here is everything that we care about. The players will not be invested unless they get to delve in and understand and explore what they care about in the world. That's why everybody's always going off for something shiny. So when Sam cared about how Daedrin would react, we all are invested in finding out that because it means something to him. So this game allows us to follow the things that actually mean something.
Well, and this is where this is why traditional role playing can be a bummer for a player in a party. Let's say, again, I'm the thief. And I've been in my third session, and there's never been anything thiefy I can do. Damn, I wish the GM... thiefy shit I could do.
Throw me a bone, huh?
Right, well, I mean, because... you really are waiting for all the classes and all of the things to matter. And so when you're playing in a big group of D&D, I've often said the worst thing GMs have to deal with is a diverse group of characters, and they got to somehow, hopefully if a module, for instance, is well written, it will have these things in it where every member of the party can play. But
it's hard when you have that tension where you're on the wizard's arc, right? But then now what's the barbarian going to do? Well, he gets bored and starts smashing stuff, and that complicates it for the wizard, which shouldn't have happened.
The player gets bored and complicates things because it's and this is the problem with, and I think a lot of people felt this way. A lot of people don't like class-based gaming for a number of reasons, but one of those reasons is just that the thief is worthless unless there's thievy things to do. Completely worthless unless there's thievy things to do.
Well, except in 5e because they're one of the better combatants. But
sure, well, everything in 5e is elevated.
Well, like I hate the Ranger in 5e because like all their stuff. I love the Ranger.
Yeah,
and that's why I hate the 5e Ranger because it's like you. So even if you have wilderness encounters, it's kind of like it's really a lot of pressure on the GM to make those survival roles and those whatever roles important. Yep. Right, and meaningful or not, but so it's so cool because in this game, right, it's like you can actually allow the person who's playing that character to add meaning and whatever into it, and then you
what Del just said. Yeah. That's what made me think about it.
Yeah,
I don't have to wait for the GM to provide a space in which my thief means something.
Right.
In this game, I literally present all the things that are important to me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he's just going to make some random rolls, and we're going to, and then we might have players kind of play against each other or something like that. But I'm not waiting for the game to give my character validity. I am making him valid every time I have my turn, right?
Yeah.
And so that's something else that I think players aren't accustomed to. Being an active player is it's not traditional role playing.
Yeah.
It's just not. Wow. Now, there's storytelling gaming, which is a different role for players and characters, and like a shared narrative for storytelling game. But this is in that sense. This is I don't think it's obvious, and we don't in the book say this is going to change. You got to change your entire mind, because you can play it traditionally. It won't break it.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you play Dark Age of Man traditionally, it's going to lack the tactics of D&D. It's going to lack the tactics. Of Barbarians of Lemuria, where there are tactics, there's an entire math system that underlays this competitiveness that's going to occur between the GM and the players when there is combat or there is risk.
Oh yeah.
Right? Del only presents a variable, not necessarily. He doesn't know how we're going to respond to it. We could ignore it. Faustus literally could have said, "What the fuck is that, a bone?"
He kept walking,
and he could have kept on going, right?
I warned you in the chat. I was like, from one witch, who knows this stuff, don't pick up that bone. Yeah. What does he do?
I almost expected this David to say, "This is what happens when the swamp waters recede." Yeah. All these old bodies show up, right, and walk off, right?
Yeah. He's like, that's unfortunate.
That's
inquisitive mind. It wasn't. There's no way, Dale. There's no way I wasn't going to look at that. He knows.
Yeah, well, and you had established that previously, like when we were out in the woods early on, and you saw the cylinder or whatever, right? And you picked it. Like, we know that's what. But and that's what was so, I think, sort of awesome about Faustus's death was that it kind of sucked. Like that death sucked.
Oh, it did suck.
In the sense that like. It was kind of like it's not heroic, but what's so great about it was that it shouldn't have been, because he wasn't this like he was a hero, but not in the martial sense, right?
Well, that's what's so tragic about it. He had just delivered, while uncomfortable with this thing doing something, delivered this great speech, and within a few minutes he's dead. That's real life. I've got a client.
But that was so perfect.
1 minute he was making a sandwich, the next minute he was falling off a ladder and breaking his neck, and he was dead. And it's, I mean, literally, this is how life happens to people, right? Or death happens to people.
What's
you don't remember something unless it comes at you sideways, unless it's spontaneous. I don't want to front load with anything. That's when I come to this game, I just go, oh, I wonder what they're going to do. Where you at and whatever, because we're creating this story together. Right.
Oh, God.
It's weird the way you roll it.
Yeah.
That's also different than in traditional gaming. It's the GM's job to inspire us through some story or through some narrative or through some description to get the players to buy in. Well, Dark Age of Man flips that on its head and says, you're supposed to hit the ground, you're supposed to put your character in space, you're supposed to establish your space, what you're doing, who you are, and if you can't do that, don't expect the presenter in Dark Age of Man to do it, because that's not his job, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things Dark Age of Man literally flips traditionally on its head, but you don't have to play it that way, right?
You create the bubble of the world around you, and it moves with you, and then that intersects and intercedes with everything else going on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, my absolute favorite part of this system is that it is not, you're not on a path. You create suggestions through the seeds, right? Like basically the only real control has is through the descriptions that they use in the inciting incident and the setup, right? Like, and because once that happens, like then the players will do things like decide to, you know, get themselves into a court case, right? Or whatever. And like, I mean, I could never in a million years have thought that would happen. And it was so weird and fun for me because I'm like, what the, you know?
Yeah, you have to on the fly conduct a trial, right?
But it allowed all of us, I think, to kind of like to flavor, you know, everything that you do, every action you take, every description you make in this game really then flavors the descriptions of the other players when they're describing, because you know, it's like you said, right, Jason, where I described that sort of starting scene and then you
confirmed it.
With that.
My job is to confirm what, and it was I made like, legit so what cool. You're doing, and I made everyone else at the table aware that we might be aware of this for whatever it means. It doesn't have to matter that we do. But here's,
but it's like,
you know, and that's the,
you have narrative stakes in this game instead of like math stakes, you know, and that's what I love so much about it. There's a big difference. So we all talk about the quantum ogre in D&D. Oh, the quantum ogre, that's bad. You know, why? Because there's truth, right? There's room A, there's an ogre in it. Room B, there isn't. And the players have only one control. I'm going left. When you move the ogre, you fuck the player's choice. You really fuck the players out of their railroad. You railroad them by moving the ogre. Okay. Well, in Dark Age of Man, you're setting your place. You're setting your scene, what you're doing, where you're going, what is going on. And Dell's just rolling a random seed. He's going to look contextual and say, this might be a good place to put this in front of Sam's character based on what Sam's doing. What's Uda doing? Let's go here. Uda, you know what? I'm going to slide this into what Uda's doing here, and I'm going to present this to Uda. So Dell technically is going to look at the RSC, and he's going to use it in the best contextual place while we're all creating our fiction. So he's technically going to put the quantum ogre in the best possible situation.
Wherever,
right? So again, we're flipping the traditional game completely on its head, right? I'm still making choices. I'm still Uda. I'm still wanting to talk to Washburn. I'm still here. I have a goal. But he could have rolled something that would have come up naturally out of Wesweld's mouth. Well, hey, we have a problem. There's a giant in the south. He rolled giant, and Wesweld said, listen, that's a problem. We got a bigger problem. We've got stories of a giant in the south. I need you to go take an army and go check that out. And I would be like, okay, fuck, I guess that's what I'm going to do. And that's the game, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
In D&D, you're fucking the players from their decision by moving the ogre. They don't know it, but you really screwed the players when they have a choice. They have only two choices. They can go right or they can go left. But you move it, you basically just said, no matter what direction you go, you're going to get what I want you to get. Well, that's bad gaming. In Dark Age of Man, you're going your direction. I'm just going to put something in front of you that I've randomly rolled here. If it contextually makes sense.
The crazy thing is, like, we're all building that railroad at the same time, and
you're building your own railroad. Crazy, right? Yeah, Sam, you just nailed it. You're actually responsible for your own railroad. How you started your character, you alienated your character in the north with a party, doing a thing. You completely removed yourself from where we might be and what we might be doing.
That's all on Sam.
That's all on Sam. That's right.
Yep. Yeah, and, you know, I think that's the most satisfying thing for me in this game is that your choices as the player not only matter, but that, especially with this group, but I would imagine really any group that plays this game, if they're playing it intentionally, they're going to make all of those things meaningful within the fiction, you know, whether it's now or several sessions down the road, because, you know, it was like, that's why I was asking about the witch, because I was thinking, like, damn, if I actually get close enough to this city, if there's another witch, and if she's as, I mean, because to me, epic. When you roll a witch 3 times in a session, that's important within that session, but to me, I'm like, that's important beyond just that session. She must, and the fact that she was able to mind control Faust, who's like, you know, the dude who the mind dude, right?
He's the damn intellectual of the group, right?
Right. And so now I'm like, and I was flavoring it too with the idea. So when Dell had me roll those random things, and it was like along the ancient way, right? Yeah. So part of me was thinking, okay, the ancient highway that the Romans built. But then I was also thinking, well, what's more ancient than that? Well, the Celtic, you know, the Druids and the whatever. And so going through, I was conceptualizing sort of this ancient, like, either druidic rituals, you know, path that would go from like Cairn to Cairn or whatever.
Stonehenge.
And so
it predates the Romans, right? Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so when then, you know, and then thinking about, okay, well,
so when you did that, I rolled carve.
Yeah.
That's what I was carving the You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
What he suggested just folded into, that's what it is, carvings of that.
Right.
And I was like, why the hell is this around here?
It's funny because in the player who won't like this style of playing is the person who doesn't want to know anything. They do literally want to experience the world through the GM's eyes, and they want to react. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. That a lot of people that's the role they want. Just, in this again, the presenter has that magical feeling, right? Because the players are taking kind of agency and control of their own narrative. It's the GM who makes that roll and goes, "Oh wow, that's cool," because they don't. I mean, in a way, the presenter's having that feeling, right? Because the player doesn't know.
You know, you've got to embrace it.
Right,
that's all.
That's it.
You know, in other other games like we've been talking about, that's kind of faux pas. You know, you don't want the players running around all over the place just doing
That's exactly right.
Everything topsy turvy. You know.
No, and they're not designed for that. And they're not designed for that.
It's interpreted as a loss of control, and you know, that's not how you quote unquote play the game.
When I hear a player say they're bored, or I hear a player say they're frustrated, their character never matters, then I want to say to them, you need to try another game. Because it's not D&D. That game is designed to do a thing, and it does it very well. It wouldn't be around 50 years if it didn't.
Right.
You're not a different D20 OSR. You need to try a different game. Not a different group, because they're not to blame for why you're playing that way. That's the way the game's designed. So when I see that person, like, hey, you know what you want to try? You need to try Dark Age of Man. There's a free PDF. Go get it and try Dark Age. You know, this is because that's what I'm hearing. When I hear somebody say they're dissatisfied or they're not having fun at D&D, I say, what that's telling me is their character doesn't mean anything. Because I play it all the time, and I know what my character means in these games. Doesn't mean a whole lot, right? The experience means a ton to me as a person and a player, but my character doesn't mean much. It only means something when it happens. It only means something when he says, "Hey, Jason, roll initiative," and I roll, "Hey, it's 6." My character got a 6. You know
that makes sense. Yeah,
but when it comes right down to it, the story's not about my character. Vela's just part of the group, and Vela will have her moments. But we're all responding to the world in really a survival game, right? For the most part. And again, that's the way it's designed to be played. That's the way it's been played. And trying to play it differently, mathematically, you will die.
To develop a character, you have to have a desire to explore that character. That's what I mean. Like, let them go and lead them to find out something.
Sure.
So when you're involved in that, and like I said, nothing can be contrived.
No,
that's how the joy of it, because you remember stuff that come at you sideways. You go, "What the hell? I didn't expect that."
Well, and that's the great thing about that's the great thing about Play to Find Out D&D. I'm not only playing to find out what's happened. I can reflect back on the session and say, "Oh wow, this happened, this happened, this happened." But I also learned something about Vela, because I'm not really role playing Vela. When people role play, they're role playing a voice and they're role playing this character in their head. But you can't know about your character when you're only reacting to everything the DM gives you. How can you know who your character is until it's over? Until you resolve this night, before campsite, I really don't know how Vela's going to respond to stuff, because I'm only waiting to respond to stuff, right? So, as opposed to establishing a character with a narrative, with a goal, right? And they give you these tools in D&D, like goals. Your character can have these goals, then you're working toward them. But when you're working toward them in something like D&D, it feels artificial because D&D is not set up for you to work toward goals. It's set up to where you as a party work towards something.
Work towards. So it's like in D&D, it's like your SEAL Team 6. And your goal is to kill the terrorist.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the story. And so I use
But my SEAL is also trying to buy a new house on his third wife. Oh, but that ain't what the game's about. We don't care about you being the guy that's on your third wife trying to buy a big house.
So I remember I was watching these like cop shows or whatever, or it might have been even like a military thing, right? But and I was thinking like I would see these combat scenes, right, and they would be blowing up the Germans or whoever it was, and I was like, cool. But what I really really liked was watching what would happen when they would go home and they would be asleep in their bed and they would have that PTSD and they would like imagine that their whole house is shaking and actually it's just fireworks. But like that to me was like, holy shit. And so what happened to me was that's what this game did for me. It allowed me to not be SEAL Team 6 necessarily, but to
be the person that's
explore
in SEAL Team
each
6.
member of SEAL Team 6. And that was, so I was like, holy shit, Dell and Jason created the perfect version of D&D for me.
Which is why this would make a great superhero game, because what's compelling to me about superheroes is Batman when he takes off the cowl.
Exactly.
That dude psychologically, that's got to be amazing to explore. Because when he puts on the suit, he's a badass. He's got a mission. He's got a job to do. You know, he's got ethics and morals. But it's the dude that has to live without the cowl on, right? That becomes this becomes this thing that's actually more traumatic, more dramatic, probably. The ass kicking he does against the bad guys, that's a given.
You know, the idea of Spider-Man. How do I save Gwen Stacy from falling off the bridge, or do I save this car? Kids. Well, ultimately, he's going to do both in the movies, but in this game, it's like, well, let's see, what happens, you know. And so, let's say he saves Gwen Stacy, right? But then he goes back to school, and his, you know, one of his friends in chemistry class, little brother, was in the car. That, you know, and so then it's like, oh shit, like that's something that you don't experience in D&D because it's not meant to. You could, but you're forcing it.
No,
where
you are
in this
definitely
game, that's incredibly important.
Yeah, you definitely are on a mission. And I mean, our little playtests of superheroes in your sessions, I actually felt like that person who had, I mean, my number one goal was to keep my identity secret, period. And there were, every step of that game, there were moments where my identity was almost revealed. It's like, now I feel like a fucking superhero. Right? Because it matters. The world knowing who my character is going to complicate everything for me. So it's like, I actually felt the risk of that. In Dark Age of Heroes, whatever we were playing, right? I actually felt what it must feel like to have this job to do, but knowing that I cannot afford to be exposed every time I go to do this thing, and it felt like there was a weight to it, right?
It was, and it was fun for me too when you would describe like, you're putting up this sort of shadowy whatever, right, to obscure your identity, but then you roll a natural
one against the cop, right in the subway.
Like, okay,
and he's looking right at me, and I know he's looking right at me. I'm like, oh shit!
And you're like,
I have to hope this cop doesn't put two and two together.
Right,
guys, I gotta run.
Hey, so, David, man, it's good. We gotta get playing more, guys. Man.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Well, I appreciate you playing tonight, man. Awesome.
I really appreciate you, man.
It was good game with you guys. You guys enjoy the rest of the week, and I'll talk to you guys later.
All right, my friend.
All right.
Sounds good.
Okay, all right, good night.
Oh man.
Well, we'll wrap this up
real quick. Real quick, I was going to say that talking about earlier rolling the same things, like I rolled bone 3 times. The one with him finding the bone, and then because of that vision that you had that correlated with what I rolled independently about the pilgrims coming down.
Right.
That's why I introduced it to Jason. I was like, we have the feast of saying Aethelwald, just threw his name out. And then you said in your vision description, you said that they're carrying this box. I'm like, hell, they're carrying. I roll bones again. They're carrying the bones. Of Aethelwald. As far as a relic, and this would be a great thing.
That's exactly what I wrote down in my description, because I wrote, the bones of a saint, right? And then underneath it, I fleshed it out. I was like, all right, so pilgrims. So originally, I had it as pilgrims. They were coming from basically Lindisfarne,
right?
With the bone or a bone or whatever of Saint Cuthbert. But then you said it was Aethelwald, and I was like, well, shit, yeah, that's even better.
Yeah, because Aethelwald is from our chronicles. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, but then I rolled bone again. And then whenever I said, okay, wait a minute, this might be a skeleton, and I looked at it and I said, oh, perfect, the witch, right? I don't know exactly. And then David's like, the bone's glowing and it's trying to get back, you know what I mean? And he's like, is this the witch that was? I'm like, yeah, I guess so. This makes perfect
sense. And that's the thing.
And
I love that because to Faust truth, and it works.
And so then you can be like, perfect. Thank you for giving that to me, because now I don't have to come up with it.
That's what I meant. We're all presenters, and we're sharing these. We're dreamers of dreams as well.
And I've said it before. The greatest horror is the horror you're creating in your own head, not the horror that they create. So Faustus, by saying, "Is this the witch?" That tells us that Faustus is. That's what creeps David out. That's what's upsetting Faustus and David.
Exactly. That's what
you're not going to do better than that. David's going to create his own misery, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's why the game's important, to let people express that and follow that. Not only their own ambitions or whatever, but that's part of what they want to discover.
Right.
And his view of Daedrin.
Put
more weight in that. It's the same respect. We looked at Daedrin. You I didn't have to make that.
No.
I didn't have to contrive that. Daedrin being important. It's important to him so that he brings it to life in the game as representing his character. It's a perfect handshake. Man. It just goes.
Oh yeah. Well, and it worked great because of course when you said it wasn't just Uda and. Westwell.
It was all the noble.
You said there were but not even all of them. It was like I think he described it as like a select few, right? So to me, I was like, well, all right, Julian would be there because he's the guy. He's like the top of the aldermen in terms of power, wealth, and influence, right?
He's my trusted alderman.
I'm Washburn's old buddy.
Brother-in-law.
Brother-in-law, right?
That makes sense, right? But then I was like, all right, well, there's got to be. I always looked at it as I think Daedrin is just based on our previous games and whatever, right? That he's an ambitious alderman, and in some of the games he might side with, Vadamant Mort in whatever. That's not kind of established in this fiction as much anymore because it kind of resolved itself, but it's like Daedrin is here, and he was this. It was cool that I was able to like insert that, just that little thing, because it's not all that consequential to the overall narrative. But what's neat is it
that's
allows you
role-playing,
guys to
like the boxing game, that boxing role-playing game I have. Every player at the table has to role-play. So when I'm role-playing my boxer on my turn, everyone else at the table is supposed to role-play somebody that I have to deal with. So that's something you'd never see in D&D. But that boxing game is brilliant because when I'm on my turn as my boxer doing my thing, it might call for you to be my manager in this conversation, and I have to make rolls or whatever against whatever you're presenting as my manager, my boxing manager. And then on my next turn, it might say it's my ex-wife, and they'll turn to Sarah. Sarah's got to play my ex-wife in this scene because I'm trying to pay off my alimony or whatever. It's like this.
Right.
So everybody at the table gets to role play on everybody's turn.
Yeah.
So that's brilliant, and I loved it. It was fantastic that you say, "Hey, let me play Daedrin." It's like, duh, of course.
Right.
Because that's the one thing we don't write in our book, that the other players should probably pass the hat and play some of these other characters. I mean,
Well, it takes it's funny because like I was thinking about when you're a presenter, GM, DM, whatever, right? When you're in that role in most games, it's stressful because, you know, people think that like coming up with shit on the fly is stressful. That's not stressful. What's stressful is trying to implement it in a way that makes sense,
Correct.
right? And so like in D&D, it's hard because if you're running a module, you really have to like to do it well. I think you have to really memorize the module.
You do, yeah. And why? So because you have to understand the context of everything. If you don't,
right?
And if I'm learning the module as we play at the same time that you're learning the module, there's something that's it's gonna connect to something later that I need to know about. You don't need to know about, but I need to. So you're right. You should memorize that module. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's important because like as the DM, you need to, you know, your voice and the words that you use and the weight that you put into describing something that's how you cue the players that this is important or this isn't. So that's incredibly stressful, at least to me. Mm-hmm. Where here it was a little bit stressful. It was kind of the opposite. The most stressful thing for me in the beginning was not doing that. Right? Was not planning anything.
Correct.
Because and so
how do you tell the GM don't tell them a story. Don't say follow me, look at this.
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
Well, most important,
can you not do that?
Your story. You don't tell them your story. Yeah. You facilitate our story, right?
Correct.
And so that's what's so great. It's like because when you're in that presenter seat, and the players start putting that stuff out there, right, Del? You were like, oh shit, this just made my job so much easier.
Exactly. Yeah,
because now this one word seed that made no sense to me now makes perfect sense.
Yep.
And I didn't do a thing. I just let
the missing piece. You just put it in at links.
Exactly. You fit that puzzle piece in.
And this is the biggest mistake I think GMs make, and whether it's D&D or this style of game, you don't need all the details, right? You need that variable. The details will handle themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a lock on the door. That's all you need to know. You don't need to know all the details of the lock on the door because it's going to come down to it. It's a simple thing. The thief in the party is going to want to check that lock for traps. Going to want to pick that lock.
Yeah.
That's the detail is going to be whether he does such a thing. Right? That's the detail. Well, the lock on the door is a general concept, right? Yeah.
Oh God. Well, and it's so tough too because in the more traditional systems, as we all know, right? If you fail that lock, check. What are the consequences?
Well, yeah.
So the consequences are most likely you
sledgehammer.
Don't get to go into that
room. If you're playing Dragon Slayer, you can use a sledgehammer to sunder the door.
Yeah.
But if you're playing other games with the door's locked, you got to turn around and go do something else, generally, right? Or everybody in the party goes, I try it, It's just,
And so what's funny to me is like, and I've been in those moments in D&D where the thief fails, right? And then the fighter or the barbarian's like, oh, I just want to smash it, right? So they smash it, they go through the door, and that's it.
Yeah.
But I've been in those situations too where they fail and they either don't smash it or they don't succeed, right? Mm-hmm. And then somebody at the table inevitably is like, gosh, I wonder if that made too much noise. Like if something heard that. Mm-hmm. And the system, you're like, oh God, do I now make that happen? Mm-hmm. Because that makes perfectly logical sense.
Right.
But the problem is that because the game is mechanically designed around math and combat, if you do that, it can be punishing. It can actually be seen as punishing to the players.
Yeah.
Right. Where with this, it's so much more rewarding, both because the player is rewarded for, oh yeah, you thought this thing.
Yeah.
This is important to you. Yeah. Oh, and hey, I happened to roll this seed that didn't make any sense, and now it does.
Right.
Right. Or hey, I'm going to roll here. Right. And then also,
that's the beauty of a truly universal system too. Dark Age of Man uses a truly universal system. Yeah. You roll a D12 against a DV, no matter what the narrative, no matter what.
Yeah.
You and Dragon make a D12 roll against this DV. This is what you're doing. Or it's you standing on the shore, contemplating the existence of God and making a prayer. It's the universal system. The details of what you say are true, and we're going to call down to affect play one way or another, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a truly universal system. D&D is not universal. You've got you've got some mechanics that are shared,
right?
But how mechanics are applied are literally procedural. Oh, combat checks go this way, and they go in a certain order. They go with an initiative check, then they go in a certain order. Blah 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 blah.
And
our game is literally open to a die roll happening moment to moment, or maybe twice a night.
Yeah, it's whether you're in a trial or you're trying to, like Sam said, pick that lock, and if you fail, then there's a consequence to that failure. Somebody heard you. You know, there's a natural balance. You know what I mean? So it's always risk and reward.
Yeah,
but it opens that door to not just combat focused.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
exactly. Haggling over the price or something, or you can be in a trial, or you can be fighting, or whatever.
Yeah,
extend yourself.
I mean,
you make the situation more dire for yourself, or you make it more beneficial for yourself. You know? You could argue yourself.
I mean, how many? How many times? So I was thinking in this game, like obviously the first time when I played Ethelwald, right, like. He didn't get into combat except by accident, right? And then I think when I was running,
and the only wound you suffered, I think, was Dell's character punching you in the chin, right?
Yeah, and I might have
by accident. I think didn't he punch you in the chin?
He did. Remember,
I got in charge. Yeah. No, it's fine. And then I jumped in front of...
Oh, right. That's what it was.
I got hit 2 or 3 times.
I switched to the base because I didn't want to shed blood.
It's entirely my fault each time.
But I was a holy warrior at that point.
But that was crazy, right? And then your character, Janus, right, like, he didn't fight. Like, he was not a combat guy. I mean, granted, you had Yami, but even then, I felt like there weren't that many times where we had small-scale combat. There was maybe a little.
No.
But for the most part, it was
the
only combat was the big combat, right? And then in this game, right, Faustus he's not a fighter. Like he doesn't engage in except that one time he did, but that was fine.
No.
But you know what I mean?
But
like,
that's Shakespeare.
It's so
he picked up the bone and he carried the bone with him. And everybody in the audience watching it goes, "No, don't. Why you carry that bone around?"
Right.
He, like, as he dies, says, "Fuck! I shouldn't have picked up this bone."
Yeah, exactly. Right, and it's like when you're watching the cheesy horror film, and there's a sound upstairs, and the blonde girl goes up to, and it's like, no, you go out the door. You have a cell phone. You've been on it the whole damn time. Go out the door, right, and say, "Hey, Tommy," your boyfriend or the ex-boyfriend who's got the nice car and huge muscles and a bad attitude, and you come over. I think there's somebody in my house. You're like, "Yeah, girl," right? But no, what do? You run up to the source of the noise, and then you either get got by an alien or a monster or a serial killer.
Right.
And then what happens? Everybody's like, oh, where'd Jenny go? Yeah. Well, we better go look.
Right, exactly.
Except the one person who's like, nope, and they run. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, man. But yeah, same thing. I was like, then I
saw you type it there.
I know. Well, because, secretly, of course, I wanted him to, because I wanted to see what was going to happen. But
right.
But I love.
And it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It literally could. Turn out being something else. But
yeah. Well, I mean, I did not. I did that by a couple times where I had seeds that were somewhat positive for you guys.
Right. I mean, they don't always have to be a negative thing, right?
It could have ended up being a murder that had been committed, like you said, and in the when it dropped and something.
And he's investigating.
I rolled it again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then with the other things that was happening, I was like, oh, geez, I think something's in there.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. Didn't you ask him to make a luck check?
Yeah, I think so.
And I think a bad luck item or a good luck item, right?
Right.
Yeah. When he picks up the bone, it's like, and he says, "I'm going to look over this bone." And so he says, "Well, let's make a mind check on this. If he fails it, that could mean he doesn't recognize something about it that makes it dangerous.
Yeah.
If he makes it, he recognizes it's just a bone, or it could be dangerous. You might want to.
Well, if he recognized, I might have would have utilized the carve to say there was carvings on it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I would have fucked with him so hard.
So you don't decide whether it's good or evil.
Correct.
You don't decide whether it's good or evil.
That didn't happen until later on.
His role decides whether it's good or evil.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but that's the coolest thing. It's like, you get into that situation, right? We've established that there's a witch. We don't know if she's dead. He picks up this mysterious bone. Maybe, like you say, there's carvings on it. So we know that this is some kind of weird nonsense, right? And then he fails his roll. At that point, I'm like, oh, the runes start to materialize into snakes.
Yeah.
Right. And they, and then you got this voice in your head again, you can't ever be free of me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is the great thing.
But
it's the great thing about this, right? And we can draw on all of those past experiences, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I did want to say...
You could literally have connected it to the witch that taunted him 2 sessions ago, right? Yeah.
Oh, I would have, totally.
Yeah.
I have already established in my headcanon that Father Falcone is an absolute tool in this session too, because he was nowhere to be found when all this shenanigans was going down.
The things that you think, I don't have to think. And
exactly.
I'm just saying, the presenter don't, because you will feed that into it. And then I go, I guess that he thinks that. Let me see if that's true.
Right.
So what you do, where you're going, on the tracks you're laying down, I just intersect with them and I go, crap, I guess it is. Right. That way you get to follow your heart, your dreams, your aspirations.
And that's part of the goal with Dark Age of Man setting. We wanted to give you a place that everybody knew they would start in. So again, the presenter's not naive about the world, neither are the players. But we didn't define good or evil. Falcone is this nasty...
I mean,
we just gave them names and a job. And we don't over-define Dredgewater. We just make sure everybody would understand the time and the place. But we don't overly define. We do kind of define the leaders. Washburn is a sober, because he is the Lord. So the presenter needs to have some idea whether this guy's a negligent lord or an evil lord or whatever. But everything else, we just give him a name and a job. And
exactly.
We wanted, again, for this to work, there has to be something that puts the presenter in the headspace too, but without overly defining it, so the presenter has to read it and say, oh man, I got to make sure when they meet Sam that I play Sam a particular way. Samantha's going to be whatever you want her to be, and then their roles, their communication and their felled roles with Samantha is going to direct maybe how Samantha treats Saverick. If there's a conversation and then Saverick makes a prestige check and fails it miserably, but Samantha, that starts to establish a relationship between Samantha and Saverick that becomes the truth. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's it is truly open for impromptu interpretive play. That's the key. And we do turn all the traditions on their heads. We just don't overly define. We don't spend 300 pages or 100 pages of a 300-page book telling you how this is run a particular way. You hope when they play it, by just the nature of what you're supposed to do as a presenter, which would change that seat enough that it would turn the tables. But I think a lot of people play Dark Age of Man probably traditionally, which is fine. It won't. You can't break it. It'll work. It's just not a tactical game like D&D where that tradition. People are going to feel like they're going to feel it's a lightweight game because it's not a D&D math formula for combat.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, and, it's funny, it's so weird. It's so funny to me because we, literally every post-session chat we say the same thing over and over again, but it's because I'm amazed every single time that the system works the way it does.
Yeah.
Because, it's like, it sort of shouldn't, but it does. And to me, I'm like, well, is it just this group? Is it the system and the group? Can anyone do this? I don't know. Yeah. But it's so fascinating to me. And of course, I've said it a number of times, but this is the perfect setting and rule set for me.
Yeah.
because I love the Dark Ages. I love that historical time period. I really buy into that. I love that the rule set is open enough that it really allows you to play a character in a world more than a set of stats and numbers.
Imagine if you made Ursa. Yeah. So let's just talk about this.
Yeah.
Let's say you make Ursa in D&D. So you're going to say, I want to be a barbarian. I'm going to name her Ursa, the Blood Witch.
No way.
You're going to roll her up.
Yeah, she's going to be a tiefling warlock.
Okay, so she's going to be a witch or a warlock. I guess they have that class, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to create this image, this avatar that you can't wait to play. But then you don't actually get to play the character. You wait your turn to exercise your skill, your spell, or your combat. Right. You're not actually going to be Ursa leading a war band in the woods of the country north with plans. And this is what I can't... This is why I say people who... They make this avatar and they're so excited, but they're really not going to be that avatar, but a few quips here and there during sessions. And everything they do is going to be mechanically relevant just to the mousetrap that they're in. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's nothing wrong with that. That's traditional. It's old school. It's been that way for 50 years. But when I meet that player who says, I'm playing this barbarian, but it never seems to matter. Because it doesn't matter. Right. All of your tricks and all the little features on your character sheet, those matter when they come up.
Right.
But who your barbarian is, that's all in your head. Because most anybody at the party don't really give a fuck. Unless it's Critical Role.
Right.
Right. And they're putting on a show.
They still get sucked into the mechanics. But the funny thing is, like, to me, I know the biggest thing that I always think about with this system, one of my biggest struggles with D&D was that I liked putting my character in the shit and then seeing what would happen. And that is the wrong way to play D&D.
Well, it is. And all those people who are playing to win will be pissed off at you. Yeah. Right. Which is me. Initially, I played a character. I didn't play a role in the party. Exactly. I'd play a character who might do something dumb, like actually push the door open and take a look, and piss off everybody in the party. Goes, no, man, the door might be trapped. No, it's like, well, my character doesn't know that. Yeah.
Right.
And I had to learn to play D&D like everybody else, and that's how I play it now, and I enjoy that experience. But I'm not role playing. I've said it a million times. I had those guys dog me for 2.5 hours, say I never role play. Well, the video that they watched, they were right. I wasn't role playing because I'm not role playing. Yeah. I quit, and I'm in a certain headspace that's still trying to be a character in a moment, but it's not role playing.
You know how to buy into that system. You're there to play a certain way, and I always chafed again a while to realize why, and then I was like, oh crap, I'm playing this game wrong. Like, because people say, oh, you can't really play D&D wrong. Yes, you can.
Yeah, you can.
Because if you play it in a way that is kind of bucking against the system and causing strife or conflict among the other players because of that, because they've done their jobs, they've built their characters in the most synergistic way so that they will have the best possible chance of overcoming the combat scenario or whatever, right?
Yep.
You should honor that.
Yeah.
Right? Where here, it's so cool because I can do that thing where I'm like, I'm going to just go check out what the snake is, and see what's flinging my men all over the place, right? I'm going to walk towards this danger.
Right.
I'm like, I shouldn't do that.
Right.
But, but
you were free.
Those magical moments.
You were actually free tactically to define your space in that encounter any way you could imagine and get to high ground to oversee what's happening, or you could have tactically imagined a way your character removes herself from the immediate danger but doesn't completely and that's completely on you, unlike D&D where it's like, hey, we're in combat, roll initiative, there's no getting out of it now, roll initiative. You're in combat, well, I can only do what I can do in combat. Again, in our game, you can perceive how your character might position herself, right? Like Eloy did in their Ivan game. Eloy positioned himself outside that bubble he put around the beast. And of course, Jose went into that bubble to fight it. Well, and Eloy stayed outside that protective bubble. And he created a space that, again, supported who Eloy believed his character was and how he would deal with danger. And that's, you can't, in D&D, there might be a spell of protective bubble, right? But it's defined mechanically in a hard, fast way. Which, again, is nothing wrong with that. That's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's how it works. But my point is, you could have defined that space of how Ursa dealt with this particular event, right? Right. And Dale might still say, well, you got to make a body check here because you're still in the danger as it's whipping its body of soldiers around. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And what Sam has to, when he's playing that, you're exactly right. You can tactically, narratively move yourself into different positions and whatever. You can do that, but it's always curtailed by, like, first and foremost, how you were worried about your perception for your men, and representing yourself as being a leader more so than like if I go back to are they going to interpret this as me leading? And that's what we all feel at the table. We go like that. That's why I was saying your men have seen you calm the horse down, so they're a little bit more like all of you, more reverent,
right?
And they come to your defense a little bit, so that changes DVs from there on wide. You always, it's always moving, and you're always consciously aware of how you're perceived from your character's point of view.
Right, exactly. That's why to me it's like the political, because so I think I'm on my second trip through basically the Last Kingdom books. And so many times over and over and over again, Uhtred talks about his reputation and his legacy, right? And that is the paramount thing for him. Beyond his kids, beyond anything else, his reputation is what is the most valuable thing to him. And I think secondly was like his sword, because at one point he loses it and then he goes off like halfway across the world to get it. But to me, so I was thinking that flavors a lot of how I play this game, because I'm like, among the Danes, like they weren't these ideological like crusaders. They wanted money, they wanted land, they wanted women, right? Like so I was thinking about it, like if she is this scary witch lady who can do magic, but when it comes down to actual fighting, she can't help follow her. Because most of the time you're not going to be fighting some scary serpent.
All she's got on them is influence via superstition. If she loses that, she's fucked.
Right.
Totally fucked.
And so,
like a Viking leader, you really have on your men is influence and your capacity to maintain some control via that.
Well, and you have to win, because it's like that's why Alfred the Great was so successful against the Vikings, because he built fortified settlements, and they didn't siege because they would lose men, and they couldn't afford to lose men.
Men are assets, and you don't piss them away. You just don't piss them away.
And if you don't give them their silver and their land,
that's
and their
exactly slaves, going back to that. You could have narrated yourself out of danger. And all the combat checks are still going down, but instead of you taking damage, your men are dying. So now Ursa's got to step in maybe and do more. Or this combat ends tragically with you limping off into the woods running and you've lost your army. Instead of you being damaged, your army was decimated. And now your narrative story for this session that you were planning or you thought you were going to be able to is changed. That's as bad as dying. You got to start all over with a new narrative. What am I going to do now? Right?
That's the brilliance. It's like the political and the social stakes in this game are often way higher than or more dangerous than the physical, right? Like
And I'll say this. Why do DMs fail to inspire players? Because the thing they think will affect the players, the thing they think they're saying or the thing they think they're going to do, is what the players most concerned about for their character, and they don't get it right. And you can't get it right for a party of say 6 at D&D table, right?
Yeah. Right.
So if you want players or audience to be invested, they're going to have to care about the thing. Well, if you want to know what inspires me to buy into this fiction with my character, you better know exactly what my character's going to affect my motivations. And if you don't, then you need to let me present them in such a way that the GM now knows, this, I'm seeing now this matters to Uda, right? This thing matters to Uda. The hard one is the guy who doesn't play, the guy who's a wallflower, who ain't going to give any information. He's not going to add to anyone's narrative. He's not going to add to the narrative for anybody at the table. He's not going to add to the narrative for the entire scenes. He's not going to.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, he's going to be on the outside looking in because he's not projecting the motivations of his character. Therefore, those motivations become what actually, when those are affected, he gets more involved, right? There's a great book. I can't remember the name of the book now, but I read it years ago, and it was talking about if you can figure out what it is you truly motivates you, you will be successful in life. But you have to figure out what motivates you, and most people don't know. They literally live primordially. They don't know why they're successful, and they're successful because something traumatized them at 5, right? Well, if you can identify that trauma that you had at 7. You can parlay that into motivation, because that's the thing you do not want to ever deal with again, and that becomes the thing that drives you to be successful or fit or whatever. Most people don't know why they do what they do. They don't know why they ended up successful. They don't know why they're fat. They don't know why they actually don't know. They've never figured out that thing that occurred or that motivates them. And you may not be motivated to be thin. There's nothing wrong with that. Right. Because you don't give a shit about being thin. So don't worry about it.
So,
if you don't want to be thin, don't give a shit. It doesn't matter to you. You can't create motivation if you don't care about that thing. So I would have clients that would come to me, I want to lose weight. And I just go, why? Are you really, why? You want to lose weight because of why, right? And you want to be healthy or you want to lose weight? Because we can get you healthy and you don't have to worry about dieting. You just got to get you healthy. So you have to understand, and they don't know. They actually don't know why they're wanting to lose weight, right?
Well, I mean, the best writers are always the ones that went through the shit. They had horrible stuff happen to them, right? Or like, you'll see these like, these MMA fighters who are just like savages. Yeah. And it was and they are so good. And it was because they literally had to fight their way out of every situation, from the time they were 3 years old. It's like, you have that motivation that if I don't succeed, I'm going to die. Yeah. It's like when you get to that point,
they'd rather die than lose.
Well, right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And but you can't have any when I started boxing, I actually was worried I would hurt somebody. And then I realized, when I realized I was holding back on punches and shit in the boxing ring, I said, I can't do this because I'm scared I'm going to hurt somebody. You can't be scared of hitting somebody too hard in boxing or you're going to get your ass kicked. So that's when I realized, I'm not cut out to be a boxer. I didn't want to hurt anybody. Well, you shouldn't be in a combat sport if you don't want to hurt somebody.
And it's like, you don't want to injure somebody, but if you're trying to beat somebody to the point that either they get knocked out or you score enough punches on them.
The guys that made me angry, I would beat their ass, right? Yeah. Part of the reason these guys talk shit is they're trying to make each other angry enough that wanting to not hurt those guys is not part of their mindset when they get in the ring, right?
Well, it's
because they're not all psychopaths. The only guys that don't care about that shit are the psychopaths, and they don't give a fuck if they squash you like a bug, right?
Right.
They don't need any other motivation because you're beneath me. You're beneath me. Right?
In the Last Kingdom books, they talk a lot. It's funny because Uhtred will narrate how the Vikings will often whip themselves into this like rage, right? But he's like, and most people thought, well, you how do you beat that? And he's like, the only way to beat that is with discipline. He's like, if you hold the shield wall and they break and start charging at you like madmen, they will lose.
Yeah.
Because even though they're more fearsome, it doesn't fight, and you're disciplined, you will win. And so he's like, but there's this fine balance, because you also have to have your men kind of ready to fight, ready to. So it's fascinating. But it was what we were talking about earlier with that motivation. I think it was Delwyn. I think it was Vidar, where he was having that huge like crisis of faith, right? Am I a pagan? Do I want to be a Christian, right? And like, it was fascinating to me because like, here he is, this formidable fighter, right? And you would